Hello, and we're going to be doing some hacking against the VulNyx real machine over here. This is going to be a guided walkthrough, and let's start the video. Okay, so the first thing we like to do when we do any CTF box is we like to run an nmap scan, and the nmap scan is going to be run to determine which ports are open on a system. So we're going to run the nmap scan with -p- to run it on all ports. We're going to run it with -vv for very verbose output, which means we're going to get output before the scan is finished. We're going to run it with -t4 for 4 threads, meaning it's fast but not too fast. And then we're going to run it with -s capital C capital V. Capital C is going to run common scripts, and capital V is going to run versioning information for any services that we find. So we run the command, and we find a few different ports on the system. We discover port 22, port 80, and then a few uncommon ports here. The uncommon ports are port 6667, port 6697, and port 8067. So these are all associated with this service right here, which is called Unreal IRCd. So IRC is a specific service that we can actually, that is used for chatting. So IRC Chat is something you might have heard of, and IRC is IRC Chat Protocol. So this is IRC, Internet Relay Chat, is a chat protocol that allows real-time communication over the internet via text messages. Users can use an IRC client program to connect to different chat rooms called channels to chat with other users connected to the same channel. If we can connect to an IRC server, there are many different things we can enumerate from the service, including user info, including admin user info, software version info, hosted links, and the hostname and/or IP address of users. So let's get back to it. Okay, so we know that we're going to be hacking against IRC on this particular challenge. And every time I come across a new service that I want to hack against, I like to look it up on HackTricks. So HackTricks is a website where you can look up a bunch of different technologies to hack against, and it'll usually give you a bit of information. So if you go over to HackTricks and then you search for the technology or software you want to hack against, I could type in IRC, and there's an article over here. Let's see, Pentesting IRC. So this article over here is going to give you some information. So IRC, initially a plaintext protocol, was assigned this port number, but is commonly run on this port number, 6667, which is the port number that we found. And what we can do is we can do some enumeration using netcat. So we can actually connect to the service using netcat over here with this kind of command. So we're just going to copy this command, and then we can connect to the service by providing the IP address, which is 56, and the port 6667. So over here, we see looking up your host name couldn't resolve your host name using IP address instead. The first thing we need to do is we need to log in. So over here, after we've logged in via netcat, we can actually log in by using these commands over here. So we use the user command and then the nickname command, and we can set our username and nickname, and after that we're going to be logged into the system. So I'm just going to grab this command over here, and then I'm going to modify it. So it looks like we got logged out because of timeout. So I'm just going to use this command to log into the system. So we're just going to run netcat again. We're going to log in as this user, and then we're going to set our nickname to the same name, and then we're logged in. So after that, we can do a little bit of enumeration, and we can enumerate using, for example, this version command over here. So we just type in version, and we see here that did we? Okay, we got the version information here. So the version of the software is, the type and version of the software is Unreal 3.2.8.1. So because IRC is a very old service and people don't really use it anymore, most of these IRC programs are going to be vulnerable to software exploits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the version number over here, and then I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to search for an exploit. So I'm going to search for this software, and then I'm going to search for the word exploit, and I'm going to search for GitHub because I want an exploit that has a GitHub repository. Okay, so we've got a couple of different GitHub repositories that have exploits for this particular version of Unreal IRCd. So I'm going to choose this one over here. The username is chancej715, and we see that there is an exploit written in Python over here. So it says here that it's a backdoor command execution exploit in Python 3 based on this CVE right over here. So what we need to do is we need to copy the exploit script. So to copy the exploit script, we're going to go over to the script.py file over here. Then we're going to copy the raw file, and we're going to create our own file over on our Kali box. So I'm just going to go to another tab. I'm going to go into my temp directory, and I'm going to create a script called script.py. After that, I'm going to paste in the code that I got from the GitHub page and save that. And then I'm going to run the script with these arguments. So first is the IP address of the vulnerable server, which is this in my case, and then we're going to supply a port. So if you recall, there were 3 different ports that were running the IRC server. So one of them was 6667. We also need to provide the name of our attacking machine, which is going to be reached out to open up a reverse shell. So in my case, it's this IP address right here and on this port. So what I need to do before I run the script is I need to set up a netcat listener. So the netcat listener is going to be netcat NLVP 443, and this is going to be a listener on my attacking system that's going to listen for reverse shell connections from the target victim machine. So I'm just going to run that, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to run this exploit script. So we're going to run this, and it doesn't actually give me any feedback, but we can look at our reverse shell, and we see we've received a connection from the victim machine, which is this IP address, from this port over here. If we ask, who am I, it says that we're the server user. So now that we've broken in, I can put on my voice changer and put on my scary hacker voice.
Hi everybody, this is my scary hacker voice. I put this voice on every time I break into a system, and I put on my scary hacker voice and I say, I I'm in.
And then I go back to my regular voice. All right, so everybody, we're in. The first thing we want to do is we want to upgrade our shell. Because we've got a we have a netcat shell, and netcat shells are not very useful. There's no prompt, and we can't do history, we can't do tab autocomplete, and we actually can't do interactive input. So what we want to do first is we want to figure out which version of Python is running on the system, because we can use Python to upgrade our shell. So we see here that Python 3 exists on the system. So we can just use Python 3 with this command over here. We're going to import our sudo terminal module, and then we're going to use the sudo terminal module to spawn a shell, which is going to use bin bash. Now that we've given this command, we now have a slightly better shell, and we can figure out what's going on the system. So we are the server user, and if I use this sudo l command to figure out what sudo access this user potentially has, it's going to ask me for a password. So I don't know the password, so I'm going to just I'm going to use up all of my password attempts, and then I'm going to start looking around some more. So the goal now is to get some sort of elevated access. We can go into the opt directory and see if there's any optional software in here. And we can see here that there's this task script over here. So this task script is actually what's going to help us get our privilege escalation on the system. And let me talk a little bit more about how we're going to elevate privileges on the system. So we're going to do privilege escalation on the system, and we're going to do escalation through what is called script abuse. If we can identify a script file on the server that is owned by a privileged user and is running at regular intervals, we can potentially use that script as part of privilege escalation. So on the system, we see here that this task script is owned by root, and we can actually read it. So the script looks like this, and in the slides, we'll talk a little bit more about how we can use the script to escalate privileges. So on the server, there's a script located in the opt directory owned by the root user. When we check the cron tab on the system to see if it's being run as a cron job, we don't get anything back. So we can use the Pspy program to enumerate invisible cron jobs. So one thing that we need to make sure of when we're trying to use a script to abuse to get privilege escalation is we need to make sure that the script is being run at regular intervals. So if we do cron tab -l, we don't see the task script being used inside the cron tab. So what we need to do is we need to use a program called Pspy in order to figure out what processes are actually being run on a regular interval on the system. So Pspy is a program, let's see, Pspy. Let's do a Google search for Pspy GitHub. So this is the Pspy program, and it can be used to monitor quote-unquote invisible cron jobs on a Linux system. So when we come across the GitHub repository over here, we can actually scroll down, and in order to run the program, we need to download a binary. So the binaries over here for download, we just need to scroll down a little bit after we've arrived on the GitHub page, is we're looking for the big 64-bit binary over here. And there's a link. We're just going to copy that link. Then from the victim system, we're going to download that file. So I'm going to move into the temp directory, and then we're going to download the file using wget. Okay, so I've now downloaded the file, and we're going to run the file. We're going to call this, okay, so first I need to give the file execute permissions. So it doesn't have execute permissions, so I can't run it. So I need to chmod +x pspy 64, and then I'm going to run the file. So it's pspy 64, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe the output of the program into pspy.txt, and I'm going to run it as a task with the ampersand at the end of the command. So this means that I can still use my console while I'm running the program. So I'm just going to run that. And I'm going to leave it to run for a little bit. But in maybe a minute or so, I'm going to read the file pspy.txt, and I'm going to figure out which processes are being run at regular intervals in the system. And I'm looking for the task script that we found in the opt directory. So if I read pspy.txt, we've got this information over here. So this is the output from the Pspy program. And I'm looking to see if the /opt/task script is being run. So we don't see it yet, but we're going to wait for about a minute and then run it again to see if it's included. We'll take a look at that file one more time. And we see at the bottom over here that this program, let's see, this is being run bin this. Okay, so it's running this shell bin sh, and it's running this command opt task. So the task script is actually being run at a regular interval, which means that we can use it for privilege escalation. So let's figure out how. So when we run Pspy, we see that the task script is being run. So next what we should do is we should examine the script to check if we can exploit it or not. So the script's function is going to run the ping command against the domain variable, which is set to shelly.real.nyx. So the domain over here is a variable, it's set to this, shelly.real.nyx, and so the script's function runs the ping command. So here it's going to run ping on the domain shelly.real.nyx. If the domain exists, then it's going to send a netcat command to start up bin sh to create a shell on this domain at port 65,000. So what we need to do is we need to check what this domain is actually set to in the etc host file on this particular host. So over here, we can try reading the etc host file. And this is basically, these are the domains that are set up inside of for this particular host. So we see there's 127.0.0.1, which is the local host, and 1.2.3.4, which is set to real. So the script, the domain that is specified in the script, which is shelly.real.nyx, it doesn't exist in the etc host file, but when we check the localhost etc host file permissions, it's actually writable. So this is a big no-no. Usually the etc host file is not supposed to be writable by any users, for any old user on the system, but for some reason there are very loose permissions. So since we can write to this file, we can define shelly.domain.nix, and we can set it to our own attacker system because we can write to the file. So looking at the contents of the file, we see that the domain isn't defined in the file, so we can define it using our attacker machine's IP. So we're going to add our attacker machine's IP as shelly.real.nix. So we can do so with the following command. We're going to echo, and then the IP address of our attacking machine, 10.0.2.22, and then we're going to set this as shelly.real.nix. We're going to echo this, and we're going to append it to the etc. hosts file. Okay. And then when we take a look at the etc. host file, we're going to see that our attacker machine has been defined as shelly.real.nix, which means so every minute or so, it's going to run this function. It's going to ping out to our attacker machine, and then if the ping is successful, it's going to send a reverse shell connection to our attacker machine on port 65,000. So all we need to do to get our reverse shell connection with elevated privileges is we need to set up a netcat listener on port 65,000. So after we do that, in about a minute or so, actually not even a minute or so, we get a reverse shell connection from the machine because this task script sent out the reverse shell connection. And because the task script is being run as the root user, the reverse shell connection is a root shell. So we've essentially finished this exercise. So what I want to do is I just want to upgrade my shell using Python like this. And then we're going to move into the root directory to finish the exercise. So to finish the exercise, what we need to do is we need to read the root.txt file over here. But we're not going to read the root.txt file because the organizers at the VulNyx website don't want people who do videos and walkthroughs for these machines to reveal any flag contents. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the file, but we're going to redirect the output into a file called IRC root.txt. And after that, we see here that these two files exist in the root directory, and they're the same size. Also, if we run a file hash check on IRC root.txt and root.txt, they have the same file hash. So we've essentially read the root.txt file because we created this file with the same file hash over here. And that means that the exercise is done. All right, so thank you very much for watching, and hopefully, hopefully you learned something about script privilege escalation or about the IRC service, and we'll see you next time.
Hey there, HackerFrogs! Are you enjoying this workshop? Learning new concepts and skills? If so, there's a way you can support the channel, and it's totally free. Just click on the subscribe button below the video. Also, click on the like button. And if you have questions or comments on this workshop, please leave them below the video. Thanks for listening. And now, back to our scheduled programming.